There it is.
We'll probably wait a couple minutes. Maybe now would be a good time to chat although how many do you have? You don't have that many yet, do you, Miss?
There's 20 participants total.
Maybe chat the
agenda.
agenda.
Aye, aye, Captain.
Great shirt, Dave Brown.
Phil, I'm missing my Bloody Mary.
Soon. Oh yeah, Phil's even got the signature glass too.
Yep,
Is that
I'm
a
ready to
Bloody
go.
or something tropical, Phil?
it's a Bloody Mary. It's delicious.
Yeah, it does. It looks pretty good. That's a anytime beverage for me though. Doesn't have to be the morning. Preferably not even in the morning.
The more stuff you put in it, the better, like pickles and olives and all
How do you
that good
feel
stuff.
about like the ones with like the mini cheeseburger on top, Linda?
I'm not into that one, but I do like, the olives and, the pickles, and maybe the shrimp isn't bad.
Beef
I
jerky?
would, yeah, they're expensive when you have them loaded like that.
Yeah.
I just shared the agenda in the chat, but I will do it again in about 5 minutes just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to take a look.
Yeah, I am not going to share the agenda just so I can see the meeting participants a little bit better. We'll start in, we'll give it 2 more minutes. 10:03 will be our start time. How many participants do we have, Missy? Can you tell? Oh, I can
So
tell.
far it's 23. Can you see it?
Thanks. Yes, I can. Yep.
Okay.
Garage sales up to 27 families. I keep hitting them after the map went out.
That's all right. Those are like your bonus, like it's like a treasure hunt.
Well, that's what I tell people, that your neighbor 2 doors down is having it. So don't worry about being on the map. They'll see you.
Hey, Linda, we can update that map pretty easily, at least the online version.
Well, I got the Wonderlicks called me yesterday, but Suzanne said her neighbor, but she didn't give me any name or address. So I kind of hesitated updating it and, finding out who that was.
You can't just put like Suzanne's neighbor.
Hey,
Yeah.
Linda,
Yeah.
Linda,
Yeah, they decided not to.
Linda,
Yes.
it's my mother-in-law. She's over, she's on Gravel Lake Drive.
Okay. Well, there's quite a few on Gravel Lake Drive. If you send me the address and the
Okay.
name,
I can
I'll
do
send
that.
it to Jim.
All right.
So I love watching the AI try to figure out what you're saying. And it was really funny. It came up with 2 different things for Gravel Lake Drive. There, if I say it slow enough, it does it. But before it was like, it was some weird stuff they had in the transcript. It was funny.
Somebody told me I have a Chicago accent. I don't know what that is, but
Oh, what? What are you talking
Chicago-
about, Linda?
Yeah, I don't know if
Chicago?
you're talking about-
Chicago?
It's
Are
the
you
rest
from
of the-
Chicago?
Yeah, I
The
was
rest of
born
the
in
country has
Chicago.
accents. We don't.
Hey, folks, we're going to start. It is 10:03. Welcome back. Thanks for joining our first Gravel Lake Association membership meeting of 2021. Before we get started, Missy has our agenda in the chat. Maybe she will rechat that periodically, but I wanted to give it to you too, Missy, for just some basic Zoom etiquette to enhance everyone else's experience.
All right, great. So depending upon how you have your screen set up, you probably see everyone in what's called gallery view. You can change that to speaker view. And actually when our guest speaker, Aaron Parker from Eagle gets started, I will likely pin him so that you can see him and he will have a presentation for you to watch as well. The best thing for you to do right now, unless you have something specific to say, is to keep yourself muted. And you can do that by going to the lower left-hand part of your Zoom screen, and you will see a button that says mute. And when you click on it, you'll be muted. You can also turn your video off if you would prefer not to be seen. We do like to see your faces, it's nice. But if you prefer not to be seen, you can turn your video off. Another troubleshooting tip for you is that if you're having trouble with your bandwidth, then turning your video off will help to increase your connection with the Zoom meeting. This meeting is being recorded. I also have some transcripts going along the bottom. If those are super annoying and unhelpful to you, you can go to the button that says live transcript and you can hide the transcript. You do not have to see those. If you have questions that you would like to ask and it seems like, you know, it's not a good time to speak up, you can always put those in the chat and we can address those questions. And I also recommend that you check the chat periodically. You can click on the button at the bottom of your Zoom screen that says chat. And as the presentation is going on and as we talk about things, there will be links in the chat for resources that you may be interested in. We will also share that after the fact. So we will share this meeting because it's being recorded. We will share any resources that are provided after the meeting as well. So you don't need to necessarily feel like you have to take notes right now. So yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else that I didn't cover, Craig?
No, that sounds good. I'm going to jump right into a virtual roll call if you'll help me with that, Missy. I am here. I saw Reed. You are here. I saw Pinkos. I saw Brown and LaForge. Is Hawksprung on?
I believe yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
here.
he is. Yes,
I'm
there
here.
he is.
Lalone, is he on?
Here.
I did. Oh,
Yep,
there he
I'm
is.
on.
Yep,
Great.
he just snuck on.
McDevitt, I saw Liz McGreal. I don't know if I saw Jim.
Yep, Jim was speaking earlier, so he's on.
That's right. Thank you. Jen McKelly. I saw
Here.
Jamie Paramsky. I don't
Yep,
know if I saw her.
she's here.
Bill, we saw Rockwell, I think is not able to make it. Raider, I saw.
Yep.
Toso was not able to make it. Vitkauskas is on, and I saw Zwarts. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Without further ado, very, very pleased to have Aaron Parker, who is an aquatic biologist with the Michigan Department of Great Lakes and Energy, also known as Eagle, formerly known as the DEQ. Aaron is here to talk to us about algal blooms. And obviously we've had a lot of experience with these and we're looking to learn more here. He's got a presentation and there will be a Q&A afterwards. It's all yours, Aaron. Welcome and thank you.
All right, let's see if we can repeat the successful screen sharing here. All right. Getting presentation mode. Okay, are we in presentation mode?
Yes, we can
All
see
right,
it. I can see it.
Okay, you can still hear me. I'm gonna
Yep.
hide
Looks
all
good.
everyone. All right. Okay. So, yep. As Craig said, my name's Aaron. So my primary responsibility these days with Eagle is responding to what are known as harmful algal blooms, or as I'll explain in a little bit, cyanobacteria blooms. Then I also have some points about recommendations about nutrient reduction in lakes, although it's not necessarily my specialty at Eagle. There's plenty of other people who work in the non-point source unit who could give a whole entire other presentation just on non-point source pollution prevention, but I'll touch on a few of those though at the end of this as well. Jumping in, the first thing I always like to mention is that the term harmful algal blooms is a bit of a misnomer. So when you hear the term harmful algal blooms, what you're hearing about is, or most of the time what you're hearing about is cyanobacteria. And as the name implies with cyanobacteria, it is not an algae, but rather it is a bacteria, which is important because it's a bacteria. It's a lot more adaptable than your typical algae is, and it's able to inhabit a lot more places. But because it is able to photosynthesize, and because it co-occurs with algae and it competes with algae for nutrients and sunlight, it is generally considered to be part of the algal community. It is found in diverse environments. It's found in soil, it's found in seawater. In fact, a few weeks ago, I was purchasing some new shingles for my roof, and I was reading the label on the packaging for the shingles, and it said that it was specially formulated to prevent blue-green algae growth on your roof. So apparently it can even occur on rooftops. But mostly where you will find it though is in freshwater, which of course we have plenty of that here in Michigan. It's a very successful organism. It's been around for a long time. It's capable of regulating its buoyancy up and down in a water column in order to obtain ideal amounts of nutrients and sunlight. If it runs out of nitrogen, it can just fix its own nitrogen from the atmosphere. Of course, large, dense blooms such as the one in this picture here are aesthetically displeasing. When they begin to senesce and decay, they can emit strong odors that are very unpleasant. And of course, the main reason though why we focus so much on them, along with the Department of Human Health and Services, is because they are capable of producing toxins and other irritants. So in general, where you will see blooms like this are in water bodies that have high amounts of nutrients in the water, when surface conditions are calm, and when water temperatures are high. So, if it's say March and it's 35 degrees and windy, cold, dreary out, probably not going to see one of these happen. But in that same water body, if it's got a lot of nutrients in it and it's 95 degrees, calm, bright, sunny, beating down on the water, that's basically perfect conditions for these things to form. Now, in the last couple of decades, with the high nutrients point above, zebra and quagga mussels have basically turned that on its head. Because of the dry-scented mussels, mostly zebra mussels, we're also seeing cyanobacteria blooms occur even in low and medium nutrient lakes. Basically, what the zebra mussels will do is they will readily feed on algae such as diatoms or soft green algae, but they won't necessarily feed on cyanobacteria, especially if it's actively producing toxins. They'll actually ingest it partially and then reject it, and the cyanobacteria can survive that. So you might get this disproportionate population then of cyanobacteria. There's also evidence too that because the cyanobacteria are able to regulate their buoyancy up and down in the water column, that they can utilize nutrients that are in those zebra mussel pseudofeces on the bottom of the lake, whereas other algae may not necessarily be able to utilize those nutrients. So the important thing to remember though with cyanobacteria is really the only way that you can know for sure if it is producing toxins or not is to have it tested at a lab. So if you see something like this, yes, there's a good chance that it's producing toxins or it has the potential to, but in order for it to produce toxins, it first has to have the gene that allows it to produce toxins. Then even if it does have the gene that allows it to produce toxins, it needs to be expressing that gene. So that is, they can turn on and they can turn off toxin production. But if they both have the gene and they are expressing it at the time, then yes, there can be toxins in the water. So $1 million question, why do cyanobacteria produce toxins? $1 billion answer is that scientists still do not know. Here is a title from a paper from a few years ago that was appropriately titled "Still Challenging Ecological Function of Cyanobacteria Toxin Microcystin, What We Know So Far." And in here, they cite numerous studies where toxin production has been correlated with some sort of environmental variable in a specific water body. However, what may be correlated with toxin production or may even be a cause of toxin production in one particular water body may not be the same for a water body that is even a mile away. And we've seen that here in Michigan as well. Basically, long story short, I mean, I was at a conference a few years ago at Bowling Green, and there were literally experts from around the world there. And one recurring theme that kept coming up was, we still don't know exactly why they produce these toxins. So looking back at where we sort of the genesis of our program, it started in 2013, just when we started recording the amount of reports or complaints about algae blooms that we received. So it's hard to believe now, but in 2013, we only received 9 citizen complaints about algae blooms. In 2014, that number jumped up to 25 complaints. But the major thing that happened in 2014 that maybe some of you have heard about is the now infamous Toledo water crisis, as it's become known. What happened there was a pretty intense cyanobacteria bloom that was occurring in the western Lake Erie, was able to infiltrate the drinking water supply for the city of Toledo and several surrounding communities around there. So about 500,000 people did not have access to uncontaminated drinking water for several days. So when this occurred, this got the attention of the governor's office at the time, because they rightly asked, they said, well, you know, Lake Erie touches Michigan. How much do we know about harmful algal blooms in Michigan? And is this something that we should be concerned about? So the next year, 2015, we received some funding for some new equipment, and our DHHS, or Department of Human Health and Services laboratory, upgraded its facilities. So we received some SOMs that are capable of detecting the phycocyanin pigment that's unique to cyanobacteria. We also received rapid test kits that can tell us whether microcystin is present or absent in a relatively short time. Like I said, our DHHS lab upgraded its facilities so that they can analyze for different cyanotoxins. So right now they are capable of analyzing for 10 of the most common microcystin congeners: cylindrospermopsin, nodularin, and anatoxin. And we gave a couple of grants to some universities for further study. And then we also launched the algae bloom at michigan.gov email that anyone can send an email to if they see something concerning. They believe it's a cyanobacteria bloom, like what I showed earlier. If you do send an email to this, we definitely ask that you send pictures, because that helps out a lot with, because a lot of times we also just get pictures of duckweed or filamentous green algae. So a typical sampling year Oftentimes we will have our targeted lakes that we're going to for one reason or another, whether it's to look for invasive species or nutrients. And so the crews that go out on those sampling events, they know what to look for as far as cyanobacteria. And then everything else is response. So that's when we get these calls or when we get those emails to Algae Bloom that we go out to those if we can, if resources are available. So when we go out there, typically I don't even have a boat available to me because I often have to go out on short notice, or typically it'll be a district staff person. So in your guys' case, it would be somebody from the Kalamazoo district office who went down and sampled along the shoreline. Typically shoreline sampling isn't that bad anyway, because where the cyanobacteria are going to be accumulated anyway is typically along the shoreline. If we do go out on a boat, we'll grab a sample out in the middle of the lake, and if we have the equipment, we'll take some limnological parameters out in the center of the lake, and then we'll just do a tour around the edge of the lake and look for any blooms that are occurring along the shoreline. So if we encounter something like this, where there's a definite cyanobacteria bloom up against a shoreline, but then beyond the bloom itself, there's clear ambient water, and there's a clear demarcation between where the bloom is versus where the clear ambient water is. We'll collect a sample within that the bloom itself, and then also collect a sample in the clear ambient water outside of it, maybe 10, 15 feet from the edge of that, and compare the toxin concentrations. And I'll share the results that we've gotten from that so far. So like I said, first thing we do when we get to a site is we'll insert the Exoson probes into the water. Those have the phycocyanin sensors on them. So if we start seeing the phycocyanin numbers jumping up, we can tell right away whether we're dealing with cyanobacteria or not. Then we will collect a sample. We'll either that night or the next day, we'll do a rapid test to test for the presence or absence of microcystin, which is the most common cyanotoxin. If the strip tests indicate that there is toxin microcystin present, or if we have reason to believe that maybe one of the other less common toxins are present, then it will go to our laboratory where the sample will be run through a mass spectrometer for the entire array of toxins. Then the lab shares those results with DHHS, with MDARD, with Michigan State University, and then the MDHS will share those results with whoever the appropriate local county health department is. So I guess in your case, it would be the Van Buren County Health Department. And so then it's that's where our job kind of ends. And because Michigan's a home rule state and the local governments like doing their own thing, it's up to the local health department then whether they want to post signs or issue media releases about the bloom. So looking back over the years and what we've learned so far, first of all, cyanobacteria come in all sorts of colors. So typically when you see a cyanobacteria bloom, it's going to be this green color like this. However, when it begins to senesce and die and decay, it will turn an off-white sort of cream color and blue color like this. We have also seen purple colored cyanobacteria. There's one lake where we've seen a yellowish tan colored cyanobacteria. Sometimes, I think this happens during the senescence process as well, but there'll be red that will occur on the edge of a green bloom. And then this is just another picture just showing how bright blue it can occur when it dies. So the other thing too is that scum doesn't always mean that there's going to be toxins in there. So if you recall what I said earlier, there's they have to have the gene to produce the toxins, and they have to be expressing it at the time. And so this is where I should mention that the EPA's recreational guidance for microcystin concentrations is 8 micrograms per liter. So just keep that number in mind as I'm throwing numbers around at you. But here in this example, so this is a lake, Mona Lake in Muskegon County. And you can see on the water surface that you really can barely even see any cyanobacteria in it. Basically, there's just a very thin sheen of it on the surface. However, this particular sample had 17 micrograms per liter of microcystin in it. Then here's a lake in Oakland County. And as you can see, it's got a very obvious cyanobacteria bloom occurring in it. However, there was no microcystins detected in that. And we went to that lake several times actually, and never found any microcystins in there. Or maybe once we found very low. So it's obvious it was either a population that didn't have the genes, or if they did, they just did not express them very often. Also, both cyanobacteria blooms themselves and just the amount of toxins that they produce can vary quite a bit from year to year. So this is Mona Lake again, and what I did here is I just looked at maximum microcystin concentrations that had been found in that lake, both by us and by GVSU. And as you can see, there's some years where basically no microcystin was found. There was no blooms that were seen. And then there were other years where blooms were quite intense, and they had almost 500 micrograms per liter microcystin as their max that year. Also, these things, they move around. And so this is a map of a lake in Oakland County. And when I first went there and collected a sample mid-July, it was on the east side of the lake and had a low concentration of microcystin in it. However, when I went back a week later, this time it had moved down to the southern part of the lake. And this time, as you can see, had almost 1,500 micrograms per liter in it, very high concentration. Went back a week later, this time it had moved up to the northeast part of the lake in that cove. Then went back a couple weeks later, and now it had moved to the west side of the lake, where it still had an elevated concentration of microcystin. And this was all just a function of wind direction. Basically, I would go to that lake and just see which way the wind was blowing, and every time I could correctly guess where the bloom was going to be. So if you remember, I talked about where we would do that sort of side-by-side sampling. So here's that lake that I was talking about earlier, where it had almost the 1,500 micrograms per liter. And the arrow should be a little further out. It's more like 10, 15 feet away from this here. But here you can see right in the bloom, almost 1,500 micrograms per liter. But in the clear water, only 4.5 micrograms per liter. Then as an average with all the lakes that we visited and done this, you can see in the scums themselves, quite a high amount of microcystin in there. And then in the clear ambient water, you really can just barely see the top of the error bar because it's a very low concentration in the clear water next to those scums. And so it's good for messaging, because if, say, you have a large lake like Gravel Lake, and there's a bloom that's concentrated in an area, and say the bloom is like the size of the bedroom that I'm sitting in right now, You know, if you get people that will ask who are on the clear other side of the lake, you know, do they have to be concerned? And the evidence is telling us, you know, pretty clearly that if the water's clear and you don't see an obvious scum in there, then there's a very low chance that there's going to be any toxins in it. As far as where in the state the blooms have occurred, as you can see, most of them are concentrated in the southern half of the Lower Peninsula, less in the northern half of the Lower Peninsula, and a handful in the Upper Peninsula. Looking back or diving deeper into these specific lakes that have had confirmed cyanobacteria blooms in them, you can see they're marked with different colors denoting what types of lakes they are. So whether they're excavated, natural, whether they're natural lakes with a dam at their outlet to artificially control the water level, or whether they are reservoirs. So a reservoir being a water body that was previously a flowing river, but then it was artificially impounded in order to create a lake environment. And as you can see the reservoirs and the natural lakes with dams they make up about a little over half of the lakes that we've had blooms in. And the reason why this is significant is because of the over 11,000 lakes in the state that are greater than 5 acres in size, only about 11% of them are reservoirs or natural lakes with dams. So they are definitely overrepresented as far as water bodies that have these cyanobacteria blooms occur. And then this is just a regression that I ran to confirm my visual interpretation of this map here. So here what I did was I just took the latitudes of every county in the state and ran a regression of them with the number of blooms that have occurred in each county. And as you can see, the lower latitude counties have more blooms that have occurred in them than the higher latitude counties. And so it's probably, you know, it's hotter down in the southern part of the state. There's more people here. So where you have more people, you're gonna have more agriculture, you're gonna have more nutrient inputs. Whereas in the Upper Peninsula, it's colder, there's less people, less nutrient inputs up there. Going deeper into looking at the different lake types. So I compared depths of the different lake types. So natural lakes with dams and reservoirs. And as you can see, the reservoirs were significantly shallower than the natural lakes and natural lakes with dams. There was no difference between natural and natural lakes with dams, which wasn't too surprising. The mean for the natural lakes with dams was actually slightly higher than natural lakes. Also not too surprising, since the point of them putting those dams at the outlets of those lakes is to artificially raise their water levels. Then the other thing that I looked at between lake types was a shoreline development factor. And so when I say shoreline development factor, it is not a metric that measures the amount of buildings or construction or seawall around a lake. Whoever came up with this formula, I really wish they would have called it like the shoreline irregularity factor or something like that. It's what it does is it takes into account the area of the lake and the amount of shoreline around it. And so a lake that is perfectly circular, like this one here, it's going to have a shoreline development factor of 1. That is the lowest value that you can have for shoreline development factor. But then when you get lakes like this, so like this lake here, it's a relatively small lake as far as the amount of water area surface area that it has. However, if you look at the amount of shoreline that it has a lot of shoreline in relation to the size of the water body. And so that's reflected in the shoreline development factor here. It's got a shoreline development factor of 5. And so comparing those values among lake types, you can see that these reservoir systems, they have significantly higher shoreline development factors than the other lakes. And basically what happens is in these reservoir systems is you'll get these canals and coves that tend to be shallow. They tend to stagnate. They tend to get warm. And basically in these systems is where you can get conditions where a cyanobacteria bloom can occur. And then just if you're curious, I looked up Gravel Lake's shoreline development factor. It's got a shoreline development factor of 1 because it is pretty circular other than that canal. So then going into just briefly nutrient tips. Basically, I borrowed a lot of them from this website here it was put together by the Huron Watershed Council. And I believe Craig and Melissa are going to share this with you all, but it's definitely, of all the things that I've seen out there, even though it's geared towards the Huron River watershed, and you're going to see maps of the Huron watershed, it's really applicable. The advice that they give is applicable to anybody who lives on the water. They talk about maintaining a natural shoreline with vegetated buffers to capture nutrient runoff instead of mowing straight down to the edge. Then ordering or just knowing the nutrient levels of your soil. Like my colleague Julia Kirkwood always says, she'll tell you most of the lawns in the state of Michigan probably have enough nutrients in them to grow grass. And so for $25 though, you can get a kit from MSU Extension, and they will do a nutrient analysis of your soil and provide you with fertilization recommendations, if you need any. Also mulching your grass clippings back into the yard. And then, I can't believe I, have to say this, but I hear about it all the time is, people purposely blowing their yard waste into lakes. Please don't do that. Blow your grass clippings or your leaves directly into a lake. So that's just, especially if the lawn has already been fertilized, there's going to be nutrients that were taken up by the grass and by the trees, and then those nutrients are going to be in those leaves and grass. And if you're just blowing it straight in there, you're just purposely adding nutrients straight to the lake. Then the other hot topic too is, if you have native aquatic vegetation in the lake, I always encourage keeping that vegetation in the lake. So, because those plants, so the nutrients, they're either going to go into plants or they're going to go into algae. And I've seen a lot of these lakes where even 40 years ago, the Lake Association decided that they were sick of all the weeds and plants, even native plants like lily pads that were in their lake. And so they decided to get rid of them all. And but that didn't take care of the nutrients that were in there. And the nutrients just went to algae. And so now instead of a plant-dominated lake, they now have an algae-dominated lake. And it also makes the lake very turbid too, because now they don't have vegetation to hold in the sediment and keep that stable anymore. And so anytime the wind blows now, it just whips up a bunch of soft sediment. And it's really hard to revert back to a plant-dominated system too, once you've removed your native plants. So yep, with that, I am finished and I can hand it back over to, I can stop sharing and hand it back over to Craig and Melissa and take any questions.
Great. So if folks have questions regarding any of the content presented or as it pertains to Gravel Lake and algae, you can chat those questions. I'm pretty sure Missy's monitoring the chat. You can unmute and ask your question. It's hard for me to call on people, so I would just ask you to be patient. If you hear someone else talking, please don't talk over anyone else. To the
Aaron,
best.
I have a couple of follow-up questions. I don't know how familiar you are with Gravel Lake specifically. Maybe
Not
Ken
very.
or Craig will know. Do we have any confirmed cases of the cyanobacteria, or have we been dealing mostly with algae, all with algae? Do we know if we have algae or cyanobacteria, or have ever had cyanobacteria?
Yeah, so I'm going to be honest. I had never heard of Gravel Lake until Craig contacted me. So after talking with Craig, I mean he said, and I mean Craig, you can jump in, but he said he saw something that looks like it, and I mean that's where we rely on the citizens because there's over 11,000 lakes in this state. We can't be everywhere. So
Craig or
Dave,
Ken,
I
do
don't
you
think
know?
we have a confirmed case, but in hindsight, now that I'm better educated on these, I think I have seen it on the lake body. The way Aaron, you described the decay process, I thought I saw some kind of tannish brown paint spilled in the lake, and it was kind of offshore. It doesn't really make sense. I also noticed along my shoreline, which would be Chamberlain and Dugan's, a very light green paint-like sheen. I mean, it looked like algae to me that was clinging the shoreline. I didn't get it tested though, but it seems to fit that description. That's not like what you see in the channel, which is clearly like filamentous algae.
yeah, and so now I guess this is the important part where I need to I hate to break it to you all, but there is cyanobacteria in the lake. There's cyanobacteria in every lake. So if you remember, I was talking about how it's in the soil. It can occur on rooftops. It's all just a matter of, are the conditions right for a bloom to occur? For example, we were just up in a lake around Traverse City, and we grabbed a sample off of the bottom, and there was cyanobacteria at the very bottom of this lake, 39 feet down. But of course, you would never know that looking at the surface. But that's true for every lake, though. Basically, what happens is there's algae and bacteria of all sorts in every water body. There's cyanobacteria in the little ponds in my yard right now. But if conditions aren't right for it, then they'll just stay dormant. But then, and so, for example, they're there all winter long, but conditions aren't right for them if it's freezing cold. But if conditions are right, if it gets hot and calm and they have enough nutrients, then they can take off. And then, it's also important to mention that the amount of time that these blooms can stick around can literally range from just a couple of hours to, there's some lakes where we get the first reports in July, and then they literally stick around until it starts snowing in November or December, and it's finally just the cold that kills them.
Aaron, this is Phil Rinaldi from Gebhardt Beach. I mean, we have two different types of water here. We have the lake, then we have channel where it's a little bit more still water. And I know you mentioned, preventatives, but again, can you reiterate the preventatives, and then also, if we do see it, what to do?
Yeah. So, well, The simpler one, I'll start with the second question. So if you do see it, and you want to report it to us, if it's something that you're concerned about, first we ask that you take pictures, because pictures truly are worth 1,000 words. And then we have our email. It's lgabloom@michigan.gov. So that's ALGAEBLOOM@michigan.gov. So you can go ahead and send that to us. If typically we can tell just by looking at pictures, whether it's, filamentous green algae. If it's the long stringy stuff and you can pick it up with a stick. So that stuff, while it's not aesthetically pleasing, it's not capable of producing toxins. If it's something that, looks like a sheen of paint has been spilled across the surface, then that's where it could potentially be. And then we do, I always have to caveat, we will do our best to try to get out there. But there's only so many of us, and we do get busy to try to collect a sample. And then as far as nutrient prevention, really just trying to keep the nutrients out of the water body. I was pleased to hear Craig say that you guys are on sewer systems, that you've converted from septic to sewer, because that's always the biggest hurdle for a lot of lakes is, and especially like I was looking at a map of around Gravel Lake, and I saw some pretty small lots where I would shudder to think where there was a septic system at one time. So that's always the biggest investment. So you guys have already made that, and I applaud you for that, because that's always the toughest one. Then it's just a matter of, if you can grow a natural shoreline to capture any runoff, if you can seriously just carefully consider the amount of nutrients that you are putting on your lawn to fertilize. I'll just reiterate like what Julia always says, most lawns probably have enough nutrients, especially if you've been fertilizing multiple times a year. If you're not sure and you want it checked, there's the Michigan State University Extension soil testing kit. So $25, they can tell you how many nutrients you have. And I'm guessing it's cheaper than whatever you're paying a lawn service company to.
Hey, Aaron, I want to take just a couple questions from the chat because we do have to move on. One question in the chat was about a water moving mechanism in the channel. Would that could that help with our algae blooms, prevention, control, what have you?
I get that question a lot, and I'm torn on that. I will just tell you anecdotally that I have seen full-blown cyanobacteria blooms occurring right next to fountains, and the fountains, and if it's a fountain that's like really actively stirring up the water, it will maybe move it away like 2 feet. So you've gotten yourself 2 feet of space away from it. If it's something that's underwater, I've seen that just continuously circulated around. The only thing I can possibly think is just something that is really super stirring up the water. And these are the mechanisms that you see on like farm ponds or fish ponds, where they will literally like take things the size of paddles, like on the back of a paddle boat, and just spin that thing like crazy and create waves. Because it's their own farm pond that they don't care about, or they have an investment in the fish in this pond to keep the bloom out of that. So I'm guessing the neighbors probably wouldn't appreciate that if you did something like that. So, really something to move the water around. It's one of those, you're kind of just making it somebody else's problem, and you're literally just moving the problem somewhere else. So that's why I always just advocate, try to get to the source of the problem, which is the nutrients.
One more question, Aaron, and we have to move on, but folks,
Yep.
if you're chatting your questions, we will address these. You can always email more. The other question, I'm summarizing quite a bit, Aaron, was Eagle's decision on herbicide ban or reduction until June or after June 30th. And as I would balance it, how is that decision made given regard to fish spawning versus algae control? I guess two competing priorities.
So that decision was made in collaboration with the Michigan DNR Fisheries Division and our Aquatic Nuisance Control unit. And it was, so the ban was on copper sulfate in particular during spawning season. So May and June are when the centrarchids, so your bass and your bluegill and your sunfish will spawn. And basically they are very sensitive to copper sulfate. So apparently if the DNR wants to do a project that could kill fish, they will basically spray copper sulfate into a lake to purposely irritate the fish and make them swim away before they start doing something that could potentially harm them. So the problem is with the centrarchids, with the bass and the sunfish, is the males guard their nests. If you've probably all seen it, where the male fish will have a cleared out nest and it will guard the eggs. But if you spray copper sulfate on them and it irritates them enough that they leave, they may completely abandon the nest. And typically when that happens, if they abandon it for too long, then other fish may come in and consume all of the eggs, and so then the nest is a complete failure, and you've lost all of that. So that was the rationale, was to be protective of those fish. The exception is if there is a confirmed cyanobacteria bloom. So then in the interest of human or pet health, they would make an exception to the copper sulfate ban. So if there's a confirmed cyanobacteria bloom.
Great. Aaron, this has been excellent. I know there's more questions, but for sake of
Yeah,
time,
feel free to send them to me, and I can answer them in conjunction with Julia too.
Fantastic. We really appreciate your time this morning on Saturday. Thank you so much for joining us. I imagine we will have several follow-ups for you, Aaron, but from all of us at the Gravel Lake Association, thank you very, very much.
No problem. Have a good weekend as well.
You too. Thank you, Aaron.
Yep. Take care.
You too. Okay, folks, we're going to jump into our regular agenda. I've trimmed it down a little bit, and I'm asking folks that do have reports to be as concise as possible. As you know, we do have other new business as our open section for topics that we have not covered on our agenda. Same Q&A would work. Please keep yourself on mute. So, returning to our agenda, the first item on the agenda would be Treasurer's Report.
Hi, everybody. Okay, at the beginning of January 1st, we had a checkbook balance of $22,168.07. We have had numerous membership deposits. We have had our Venmo, our apparel sales, and a few deposits for our advertising Gravel Laker. So our total deposits this year to date have been $18,994.10. Our expenses this year have been for our deposits for our fish stocking, our memberships for riparians, our membership dues for the Michigan Lakes and Streams, various supplies for printing our invoices, website hosting, our apparel purchases. So our expenses to date have been $12,831.17, which leaves us an operating fund checkbook balance of $28,331 even. And then we have our balance in our special fund.
Questions for the treasurer or comments? Great. Moving on to officers' reports. Secretary, we have none. Editor, we have none. Internet ops, we have none. Fundraising.
The next Gravel Lake apparel sale is Saturday, June 19th. It is during the garage sale at the Pinkos residence from 9 to 11 on Idleese. And then the sale after that will be on July 4th here at the McKelly residence. And stay tuned on Facebook for more information on that. And we are fully stocked with all sizes and styles.
Will the hats be at the Pinkoses next
I believe
weekend?
so, Suzanne.
So I talked to my guy yesterday and they're on track to get them. They're having a little bit of trouble with supply chain. So they said they'll be there. I'm crossing my fingers, but they are scheduled to be there. And we'll have
And we
other
should-
things too, like the tumblers and license plate covers.
Did you say license plate covers? We'll have those.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments for fundraising? I just want to say that looks good. This hardworking committee has put us back in the black again for year two. This has turned around a corner and we're in definitely a profit driving situation, which is good. I think some of you know in years past that this was not a source of revenue for us. In fact, we were losing money. So we've course corrected that. And I'm just extremely pleased with this committee. They meet so frequently, multiple times a month, and then they're planning many sale dates throughout the year. So you guys have multiple opportunities to buy paraphernalia. Absolutely. Thank you for buying the paraphernalia, but so much thanks to this group, Jen, Janice, Suzanne, Carly, Alyssa, just excellent work. Thank you so much. Moving on, water quality, we have no report. Aquatic invasive species control. I'll tell you, I'll expand upon our topic here. Number one, around communications. We're trying to do a better job of announcing on Facebook when professional lake management is going to be on the lake. Doing the best we can. Sometimes it's short notice, and I'm just going to be honest. Sometimes I don't get to posting quickly enough, but I'm working on it, and Ken's going to keep me more honest on that. So we're trying to let you know in advance of what's going on. We're also working with them on which herbicides are being applied and where. We got our first report from them, but we need to figure out a mechanism to share that with you all. As far as the hot topic, well, I'll go with the not as hot topic. The not as hot topic would be treatments on the lake body. Very successful, very minimal spot treatments that are being done for Eurasian water milfoil. The main body of the lake is in good shape. In contrast, I mean, there's some significant challenges going on in the channel, particularly with algae. We are trying to do our best to balance between controlling algae and not doing major detriment to the fishery that's back there that spawns early in the season. So quite honestly, this has been a tightrope walk. I know there's some concerns here, but I just want to be transparent on what we're weighing as we make these decisions. So I know some folks have some comments or questions. Let's have them. You can chat them or just unmute as we did before.
Hi, Craig. It's Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Hi. So I think it was a good presentation. I think there was a lot we could take from the blue-green to kind of the algae we have here. I know my concern is the navigation up and down the channel and understand the balance we have with the fishery. But what alternatives are there? And I was hoping we could get to that, or maybe we'll just have to send an email to him. I understand, the copper sulfate isn't an option during that time just because of the concerns or issues that it has, but there's got to be other chemical alternatives.
So let me speak to some of those. Ken, call me off when I go astray or whatever I miss. In terms of control, copper sulfate and a product called chelated copper, I may be mispronouncing that, are the two things that are primarily used for algae control. That's to stop it while it's occurring. The copper sulfate ban goes through June 30th as of next year for us. We can use chelated copper on a selective basis as long as we're avoiding spawning areas. That may be difficult to ascertain. Ken, I believe that the last treatment that was done was in fact chelated copper.
That's correct, it was.
Yeah, so we do have an herbicide alternative. It's not as heavy as copper sulfate, but that is something that we can continue to use selectively. Something that Aaron Parker didn't speak to, and I kind of held my question just so you guys could ask yours, but we may be getting into like a perpetuating cycle. As you treat and control that algae, you're basically putting more nutrients into the water. So we could continuously be putting this cycle in place where we're treating and then retreating. I'm not saying that that we would just stop treating, but where I'd like to push you is beyond control and to thoughts of prevention. The things that Aaron Parker said are pretty important for us to think about. How do we reduce the amount of nutrients going to the lake, whether it's fertilizer or point source runoff, areas where water's going directly into the lake, reducing impervious surfaces, shoreline buffers, stuff like that. We really need to think about that if we want to address the issue in what is just an algae ripe environment.
You're on mute.
No, I'm not on mute. Go ahead and ask.
You're not on mute.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, I understand the nutrients, the load, with dredging, I think dredging would probably be a really good solution for addressing that too, because we've got 4 or 5 foot of muck, which is just a harbor for nutrients. We can stop all of the fertilizer. We can put a shoreline all the way around this thing, and that's not going to stop the algae. We've got just a cesspool of it.
I think part of it is that it's so shallow down here that it warms up very quickly. And given the unseasonably warm temperatures, it has perpetuated the situation. We had this last year too, when it warmed up very quickly. It's better down here now because the boats have been coming through, but before yesterday, it was pretty blanketed.
And dredging may be a solution. One condition that helps algae grow is the amount of nutrients that are resident in the sediment, which is what perhaps dredging might address. There's reason to believe that our sediment might be nutrient rich for all the years of septic tanks we had. What we'd want to do, or what we would consider doing, is testing our sediment to see how nutrient loaded it is. If in fact it's not that nutrient rich, dredging may not be a solution. Now, in the research that I've done, I've not seen dredging as a solution, but I think this is a fantastic question to hit back to Aaron and a couple other experts on the topic. We've talked about dredging, but maybe not in this regard. It's worth asking and researching for sure.
Yeah, when Art Earl was here, we talked about doing I think it was more of a full channel dredge, but lately we've been talking more about a spot dredge, just because if you look, even when the algae occurs, where it goes to the end of the channel. So I would suspect that sediment does the same thing. And we actually did do soil samples and measurements when right before our Earl left the lake, and I have all of that data.
Yeah, and I don't know if it tested for that or not.
Okay.
But I'd say we can absolutely explore this. The other thing I would like to point out on dredging, which I'd like to ask our local fisheries biologist about, if we're doing more than spot dredging, that could perhaps be rather disruptive to the fishery as well. I'm personally not going to force you one way or another, but I want to give you the information. I get feedback both ways. Like, there's too much algae in the channel. We got to do something about it at all costs. And I also get the feedback, hey, Craig, thanks for thinking about the fish. This is important to me, blah, blah, blah. So I'm hearing both sides, and I'm trying to, I'm trying to juggle all concerns here. I want you to realize that we're not just traveling down one path blindly. We are really, truly discussing and thinking about this.
Right. And I think we want to be cognizant of, we would like to have it be navigable, but we also understand the risk. Our thing is there a point person that we should, like, if we have concerns, is there one person to contact? Because I hate keeping, contacting 8 people about this or posting on Facebook. I'd rather that there was just someone that we could contact, that at least to know that the concern has been heard, and then whatever is done about it is done about it.
Are you talking about from a Gravel Lake Association standpoint, or from like a Eagle, like?
No, from Gravel Lake. Like, if we have concerns about the algae at the end of the channel, is there someone on the association that is the point person for, and then maybe going to PLM and saying, hey, there's been some concerns about algae. What should we do?
Yeah, because I was here when PLM went through, and I think I sent you that text, Craig. It was disheartening that they came through, they looked at it, and then chose not to do anything. And there was a fairly good bit of algae in the channel, so they could have done the chelated. I don't care if they want to do copper sulfate, but the ban hasn't gone into effect yet, so they should have treated it.
Right.
I'm gonna jump in and just say 2 things. Didn't Chris Toso have some core sampling done not too long ago? Am I remembering that correctly? So we have more data than just what Art Earl had done many years ago. So that's something to think about. We should talk to Chris Toso for that.
Nutrients, though, we'd have to.
Well, right. I don't know what it says, but I'm just saying that let's not forget that we did have that done recently. And then the other thing that I was going to say is that, and this may be a better discussion for a board meeting, so I'm just going to say it like it's a statement. I really truly believe that we ought to hire a lake manager. These topics, like trying to reach a volunteer when you're so worried about the algae that's going on back there, or if you're thinking that PLM is not doing the job that they should do, we are not educated enough to decide if PLM is doing what they should be doing or not. And we ought to have a third party making sure that that is being done correctly. And that's just my opinion, and I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah, let me address the communication question very quickly. Ken Hochsprung and I are essentially the Aquatic Invasive Species Committee. We deal directly with professional lake management. You can come to us with questions. Getting to the meat of perhaps your question, though, I think it's important to bring your beach trustee in on these topics. The channel is very specific to Sandy Beach. I think it's important that Suzanne, Jen, and Chris are in the loop and hearing these types of things too. Just as, Dan McDevitt represents the topics of Huff's Landing first and foremost. So I hear you, Suzanne. That's fair. I don't mean it to be confusing. Maybe perhaps just make it more inclusive, folks. I just feel like I field 97% of the questions, and we have a whole well-educated board here that I'd like to keep in the loop. Does that make sense? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fine. I do like Missy's idea, though.
Me
I think
too.
that's something we should talk about, if not at this meeting, another time.
I do too. I mean, you got your armchair corporate guy who's trying to also be like a lake manager here. And, you know, Ken and I are learning things like leaps and bounds, but this is not our profession. So we're doing the best we can. Ken, you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a couple things. So Chelided, however it's pronounced, that was a treatment that was done in May, right? And I think we advertised that, and I think that cleaned it up, not as efficiently as last year because it was a different product, right? When PLM was out this last trip, it was specifically to do their whole lake survey and spot treatment as was scheduled on the schedule. They were advised actually, and was agreed not to treat the algae because of the fish spawning issue. Even chelided or chelided sulfate could have an effect on that. But to the immediate problem this week, I was in there yesterday afternoon. I took some pictures, sent them off to PLM, and actually talked to PLM. And I guess I'm going to ask everyone's help on this one. I did at least a cursory look. I'll be in there again this weekend to take a look, but it looks to me, I did not see any active spawn beds. PLM and I are of the belief that the water temperature is such that either the spawn is over, or the fish have gone to deeper waters because looking for more oxygenated water. I would like some others, especially if there's any fishermen on here, if they're in the channel this weekend, take a look, because PLM is prepared to come out and do a copper sulfate treatment next week if we think the coast is clear. And I think that's what's needed. You know, that treatment that was done in May did not have the same effect as the copper sulfate did last year. I mean, I was amazed how quickly that remedied the problem. So if anyone, ping, either call me, send me an email. I think my information's on the website, and just confirm whether or not they're seeing any active spawn beds. Because Craig, I'm of the belief that we should probably get PLM, and they're ready to jump on it next week if we give them the go sign.
One thing I will say, I like that you guys your eyes are on this. Some folks are starting to send me pictures. I mean, the monitoring and the feedback is good. So continue to do that. Take pictures.
Hey, Craig, just one last thing. I'll be honest, this is my big concern, is that if we don't get a better handle on it, I'm afraid that individual property owners are going to start trying to manage it themselves. That is a big concern of mine. And I know it's illegal and I know they're not supposed to do it. I'm afraid they are going to do it. So,
I mean, that is definitely illegal. I mean, we're certainly not going to go exceed what our permit will allow.
right. Oh, no. I just don't want people doing it themselves. That's why I think if we communicate what we're doing and that we're on top of it and we understand what's going on, I think people are less likely to try to do things on their own. That's all.
Would you guys all agree that it's still smart to take a balanced approach on this and not just keep dumping chemicals into the channel? I mean, what's our end goal here? Are we trying to eliminate all of the algae?
We're trying to make it navigable. It's not navigable right now. I know about the filter, but if you were back here, there was a blanket. It was not, we couldn't take our boats out. We did not go out. It was that bad. So,
I'm pretty reasonable about this whole thing, but I also agree with Craig in taking the proactive approach and just getting the information out there to all the homeowners on the channel, just to encourage them to not dump the nutrients into the lake and see if we can make a difference that way. I'm not against treating, but I just think that would be smart, and I volunteer to help with that, getting that information out there.
yeah, I think we need to do a bunch of things. I think it can't be I think it can't just be chemicals, and I think it can't just be, seawalls or a natural landscape. I think there needs to be a combo.
Yeah.
Multifaceted.
I totally agree with that, Suzanne, but it seems like when I bring up prevention measures, it's just deaf ears. I mean, be honest with yourselves. I won't pick on you here. are you willing to do any sort of prevention measure of all?
Yeah, we've
Yeah, let's
talked
do
about
it.
it. We've,
I'm not
I
picking
got,
on you, Suzanne.
yeah, we've already started making, we've already got like a big field next to my house that has cattails on it. We are not touching that. We are letting that come into our yard. Like
That's,
we're not doing, you know, some fertilizers. We're not treating our seawall. We've got the rocks. They've got it's got natural plants in it. We haven't, you know, we're not pulling them and we're not putting chemicals on them. So yes, we are willing to do stuff. But I also think if you had a third party like Missy's talking about, it may come like it may be accepted better because it will be from an expert and it's a third party and they don't really have, you know, they don't have any skin in the game. They will make their recommendations based on their expertise, not on what they want or somebody else wants.
good.
That's interesting because the first thing Aaron Parker said when he came on this morning was, oh my gosh, why do you need me to come when you're the executive director of Michigan Lakes and Streams Association and you're on this board? And I said, that's because they won't listen to me. My expertise don't mean as much on my own lake.
Well, generalist and specialist. Aaron is clearly a specialist. I would like to move on. We are listening. We are trying to listen on this topic. I probably do want to hear from more people, though. There's a vocal few. I don't really know where the rest of the channel residency sits on this topic. So
I think this specific problem is really, there's only a few houses back there. It's a very contained issue to those last two coves. Is that accurate? And I mean, those last two coves have been that way my entire life, where there's either lily pads or algae blooms, or is there anything new here? Or those
Yes.
last two coves that are shallow and stagnant, the water quality back there has always been maybe not an issue as far as people being addressed and wanting change. It is what it is back there.
for context, I am hearing from more than just folks in that last turnaround.
The last two, but you know, the end.
Make a comment.
Please,
This is Kathy Steffo.
go ahead, Kathy.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but Andy and I are very interested in getting water movement. And we've talked to some professionals that have under the dock pump movement systems that I'd like to see explored so that we can at least get the water moving in a gentle current back out toward the lake.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the chat, we can explore that. I'll admit I wasn't very heartened by Aaron Parker's response to that, but we'll certainly explore it. There's a fair amount of information out there, Kathy. I wrote it down.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on for sake of time. I know we could probably discuss this further. Clearly, this will continue to be an agenda topic for the board going forward. I do appreciate your feedback and your understanding of our situation too. Moving on to old business activities, Jen. If you could cover, well, sorry, that would start with Linda first on the garage sale.
Yeah, we're up to 27 families. I will add those last two. If Jim says we can update it, that's fine with me. Even though the rural areas don't get the flash or the courier, I did put ads in there. I paid for the ads to put it in there because I know that they do have them at the stores and they do distribute them to the towns and things. So I have put it in there, and it's been in about 27 different area garage sales, social media things. So it's not from lack of advertising. We just hope for good weather and hope for some shoppers, and I think we'll have a successful day. Anybody have any questions?
I've got stuff for you.
Oh, good. I haven't started setting up yet, but pretty soon.
Questions on garage sale? Jen, 4th of July.
All right. Well, this is exciting to announce. We will be having the paddle boat race this year. It will be on Saturday, July 3rd at 6 p.m. in the channel. The fun run will be Sunday morning at 10 a.m. That is on the 4th of July. It's a 5K loop around the lake. Staggered start from your own house and finish at your own house, just like last year. And the boat parade will be Sunday evening at sunset, immediately following taps. And that's it. Stay tuned for more information on Facebook.
Excellent. Questions on 4th of July?
What was the date of the fun run again? I'm sorry.
July 4th.
July
Sunday.
4th at 10 a.m. you said?
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Jen. It looks like there's a,
Which way do you run?
Stay tuned on Facebook. Carrie will set up and let you know which direction. Different beaches will go in different directions. So
Oh,
stay tuned for that.
okay. Thanks.
next item is poker run. We don't have that absolutely finalized, but I didn't know if you had questions or anything you wanted to add, Janice. You're on mute, Janice.
We still haven't determined if it will take place or not. We still need another dock host. So stay tuned.
More to come on poker run. Halloween, anything you want to add to that, Phil?
It is October 9th. And yeah, more to come on that. We're definitely doing it. So we'll go from there, but just more to come on that. But just for everybody on the call, it will be October 9th. That is Columbus Day weekend. So most residents, you know, we have a three day weekend that week. So it works out well for that. And look forward to having the third year of it.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Bear with me. Shaw Road, Phil.
Okay, Shaw Road. We are definitely, with things becoming, you know, getting back to normal, we are looking at a traffic study to be done, which will support. That is the next step. We kind of postponed that last year due to this, you know, circumstances with COVID. Population around the lake is more active this year, so we are hoping that a traffic study will support, and then more to come on that.
Excellent. Questions and comments on Shaw Road? Good. New business, Janice, phone book.
We should hopefully have it for the association meeting in August.
Excellent. That brings us to other new business. I believe Liz McGreal had some other new business, or was that supposed to be an announcement, Missy?
I think they're just going to update us on what they're doing so far.
Yeah, Anna McGreal has been working on the Gravel Lake riparian article, and I've been helping her. It's almost finished. We're hoping that the fall, we'll have it in the fall issue. We may be contacting some people for clarifying questions or specific information. And Missy will submit that article to you when it's finished.
Did that ditch next to us.
Don't
bring it up because we don't know anything about it.
All right.
Not on mute.
Yeah, Stefos, I'm gonna mute you. Just okay. All right. So yeah, so we're looking forward to that. We'll target that for the fall issue of the Gravel Laker It's cool to have my own lake on the cover of
Kindly
the magazine I
represented.
put out.
Thank you. Anna, Liz, I don't know who else is involved. Maybe you let Jim
Jim, yep,
or not. I don't know.
yeah. So,
Great. Is there other new business that anyone has or questions that they would like addressed? Other new business? You can unmute yourself or chat.
Hey, Craig, just again, I say this every meeting, but if you know any new residents, I put out a bunch of welcome baskets. I know that we've got one across the way from us, a new resident. I don't know who they are. I'll text Janice to see if I can get a name. But if anybody else knows anybody, just text me or email me. I have a list of everybody we've given them to. So even if you don't know if they've gotten a basket, just shoot me it and I'll make sure they get one.
Excellent. Very good. Other new business? I see a chat came through. No. Okay. Our next Board of Trustees meeting will be Saturday, July 10th. I have format TBD. My goal is to get us into the township hall, but we will discuss as a board. I will announce that, but I would like to try to go back to in person if we can. And then our next membership meeting will be Saturday, August 21st. I'm about 93% certain that that will be an in-person meeting. If we do decide to go ambitious and have a picnic, it will be at the DeSimone House. If we decide against that because of logistics, it will be at the Rinaldi home, where it typically is. So more to come, but the plan is to be in person for our August 21st membership meeting. Announcements. Any announcements? Chat them or unmute. I'm not monitoring the chat, Missy. I'm assuming you might maybe be.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. There was a, Jamie did say that if you have any pictures to send them to Jim McGreal or herself for the newsletter. I imagine too, any pictures would be welcome for the riparian article too. The more pictures, the better. And then the thing with pictures for Jamie and Jim is please don't, if you have a picture on your phone, it's best to email that picture to them. If you try to text it, or if you tell them, oh, just pull it from Facebook, it's not going to be a high enough resolution to look nice in the publication. So you want to send them the raw picture, likely in an email file.
Great. Other announcements? Excellent. That brings us to adjournment. All I want to say is thanks for your patience and your receptivity to our special guest. If you've got feedback on this forum or in general, you can always email me. We are officially adjourned at 11:27. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.